Hey guys, welcome to episode 9 of Remedies and Realities. I'm your host, Angie Blake, and I am super excited about the episode that I have for you today. Dr. Pete Doc Chambers is a retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel, Special Forces Green Beret, COVID whistleblower, and physician who has dedicated his life to defending freedom and serving others, from combat zones to front lines for disaster to protecting the Texas border. Doc has always shown up where leadership is needed most. With over 30 years of service, multiple combat tours, and a proven track record of standing for truth, even under pressure, Doc is stepping up once again. This time to fight for Texas as a gubernatorial candidate. Welcome to the show, Doc Pete Chambers.
Well, how are you, man? What's going on, Miss Blake? You doing good?
I am doing well. I'm doing better since you're here with me. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to visit with me.
You know what? You're worth it. Yeah. Thank you.
Aww. Thank you. And thank you for your service too. 39 years in the military serving
Total.
us.
That's right. Active Guard and Reserves. Well over 20 years for, got my retirement. So we're good.
That is incredible. So I'm sure my audience knows all about you, but would you give us just a brief background? Let us know kind of
Sure.
where you came from and who you are.
Sure. So I was born in the Show Me state in Missouri. My dad was a medical student at the time, and I don't think I actually stepped foot on the state because I was a little fella. And he left. He was a traveling physician. Started out, he had to do his internship residency in north of Atlanta, Georgia, in a little tiny town. And then he was I guess you call it one of the old school guys that did the, we call it house calls, right? And I used to ride around with him, and I'd sit in the truck, and he would go in and meet people, and sometimes I'd go in and I'd carry his little black bag, and that's really where generated the interest of medicine. But my dad was an immigrant. My dad was from Greece. He was actually born there, came over America legally, became a U.S. citizen, fought in World War II as a young man, and then also a communist war in the Balkan states, which is Greece, Yugoslavia, Albania, and all those countries. Wow. So he understood what communism was, and he also instilled in me a fierce sense of patriotism. My mom is a U.S. citizen. He married her. Back in those days, think about this. He met her on a ship coming over the Atlantic. They went their separate ways, and he was working in the engine room. But anyway, ran into her and then found her without, phones and all the things that we have nowadays, and then married her and then had me. And so
that was meant to be.
Right. And he was really good with, trauma and things, having lived through wars as a young man and, fighting for America as a partisan fighter. And so that was how he came. He came over on the Marshall Plan, which allowed for certain people that helped America downrange to become citizens. And then he was going to go back to Greece. But of course, he got married, and he spoke perfect English. He learned it from the Americans that he was with. And ended up raising me in a town of about 3,000 people, a horse ranch. He loved animals. He was a rancher kind of guy. And so I grew up with kind of a multicultural background, speaking a foreign language. And then, I had to learn how to talk to my grandparents on his side. And so that was neat, but it set me up for a different place, right? As Green Berets, we speak foreign languages and go down range and work with many cultures. So that taught me those things, but I also had that sense of, pride just to serve. I mean, that was it. He told me, when you're 17, I'm going to take you down and you're going to serve, you're going to join. He had a sign for me. I did. And I became an infantryman. So that's really how it all started. My life of service, 3 September 1983. Ronald Reagan was the president, and that's when I did that, right? And so I worked as a kid on the ranch, but I went to becoming a soldier, and truly that kicked off the whole life of servanthood.
So you kind of always knew you were going to go in. You sort of probably always knew you were going to be a doctor and in the military. Did you? Did you feel that?
Well, I knew that I was going to be in the military because it was something that I grew up playing soldier and doing that. And I had uncles in Vietnam and an uncle in Korea and my dad's history in that war and a civil war. So I knew that was going to happen. I didn't know about the medicine thing though, because once I joined the military, I fell in love with being a soldier. And that was my intent, was at that time to be a Green Beret. But I had a bad injury, broke my leg, had pins and screws and plates, and couldn't jump out of planes. So I got out, and it healed, and I was able to come back and do it again. But I got out, and so I went to college. And even then, I was not sure. I started out with criminal justice type of classes, and then ended up taking the prereqs for medical school. I was interested in it. And so I took them. I did really well. I excelled at those classes, even though I was I won't say a substandard student in high school, but I just didn't really have the interest. I knew I was going to be a soldier. And so, then I got out and I was older, it was 1990, honorable discharge. And I had already taken college classes. So I just took the prereqs and applied to medical school, and I got accepted. And then from there, I just stayed in the military. I was in the reserves. I went on active duty. 9/11 happened while I was in residency in Beaumont, Texas, Beaumont, Port Arthur. And so, that's my stomping grounds. Another one of them, Texoma, a lot of family. I spent 15 years of my life in Oklahoma, just across the Red River. We used to drive 6 miles south to go get our shiners to cut across into Gainesville and Whitesboro. And so that's really home for me, my formative years. But Beaumont is where I went. And then right after that, I went back on active duty and served in the Green Berets, of which I finally ended up going to the course as a 45-year-old guy. And, most of the guys in the class were 26, 28, maybe, that I went through the course with, but I was in good shape. I always, was in special forces shoot since right after 9/11. But they finally sent me the course in 2011, when I went to the course and stayed in until 2016. Active duty, came to Texas Guard, National Guard, and did my last 8 years in service in Texas. A lot of those on the border and other places.
Wow, that's a lot.
Long time. 39 years between the Guard and all that, in active duty. But my best time, honestly, was coming back to Texas, and then also just knowing that I was working on our border, right? And I've been on 50 something countries in the world with my military service, but a lot of other borders, but this one mattered the most. So to me, it was the greatest place to end the last 8 years.
So does Texas feel like home to you? It's home, huh?
Oh, it completely. Yeah. It's I have residency here in 98, 99, left again for active duty, came back. But it's always been home. It's just because of there's so many other reasons, but family, friends, working here, but also just protecting this border. When you protect something, it becomes yours. And I tell people, like, I may not have been born here, but Davy Crockett was born in Tennessee, and William Barrett Travis was from South Carolina, and they served Texas. And so that's why I consider myself a dedicated Texan. Maybe not a 19th generation, but a dedicated Texan.
I love it. You're dedicated to everything that you do, though. I mean, you only know how to go at it from the heart. So when I introduced you, I called you a whistleblower. Right. So tell me about the whistleblower versus DOD, because that's kind of how I met you. I met you a few years ago in the whistleblower.
Yes, yeah. Right. So that was, there's things that you learn as a leader. I was an enlisted guy, right? I was a private when I started, and I got out as a lieutenant colonel. But when you become a leader, you understand that, first of all, you're responsible for everything that happens or fails to happen under your command. Number one. Number two, you understand the difference between lawful orders and unlawful orders. And so then it becomes a question of, where is your personal courage at? And personal courage is Army value number 7. It's called personal courage. And that's a combination of physical and moral courage. And so when the shot mandates came out, and I had the largest deployment in the United States on the Texas-Mexico border since 1812. So we're talking about deployment of troops, 6,000 troops, and I was the task force surgeon. And so I was charged with their care. I take that serious. And so when I had those soldiers, and I think we were right around 3,000 soldiers on the border at the time when the mandates for the DOD came out. And that was the 24th of February, I believe, 2021. So around that time, the DOD said it's mandatory. And the Texas Military Department falls under the governor. So that's the commander in chief. And so they chose to enforce that. Other states didn't. Oklahoma didn't. But They said, no, we're going to protect our soldiers. Well, they didn't choose to do that, and that's it is what it is. But I just basically said, I'm going to do informed consents because it's a regulation. It's still an emergency use. I don't call it authorized, but EUA. And so it's still consider that to the policy people, right? To people that say policy, they use that word. And I use, that there's still science involved here, and there's informed consent that must be performed. So I did personally over 3,000 informed consents, and less than double digits were the ones that decided to take it. Well, that really angered a lot of generals, right? Because if you look at it from a general's point of view, is we look really bad. We don't have everybody got the shots, and I'm speaking in the tone that I was told. And so they sent a 2-star general down after I kept sending the shot teams away. And the third time, the general showed up and said, Chambers, it ain't about the science, it's about the policy. I was like, okay, and he liked me. We got along great. And I said, well, sir, because I was considered, kind of high end, one of 5 doctors in the Army, the whole United States Army, that became Green Berets as doctors. And I was the first one. So, you kind of get this, this status that, okay, you're not going to mess with this doc. But it didn't matter. He won the rank, a rock, paper, rank game, and basically told me, you're fired if you don't quit doing your informed consents. And that's when I said that's an unlawful order. And of course, they didn't relieve me from the military, but they took me off that job, replaced me with a guy that was completely going to do that. I ended up with Senator Ron Johnson. You probably heard about him. I know you did, but other people that haven't, were Senator Johnson out of Wisconsin, one of the 2 senators up there, asked for whistleblowers. We got that protection. So it was 4 of us at the time: Teresa Long, Sam Sigloff, Mark Bashaw, and myself. And we testified, or I did, Teresa Long and I did, in the SEALs versus DOD case, which Matt Staver of Liberty Counsel asked us to testify. We did, with that protection. And a long story short, we found out the shots were not safe, were not effective, and that we could do it by lesser intrusive means. Common sense, preventative medicine. So that's where we were at. And I became what's known in Latin as persona non grata. You are not welcome here anymore. Yep. And I got my honorable discharge. It came in a box in the mail, at a FedEx box at my site where I was at. And basically that was the end of my career. And so
that must have stung a little bit.
Yeah, it did. Those things, after you give your life to something, after you go down range and you take care of people under fire, you get wounded yourself. It wasn't that badly wounded, but still in a position where, doctors in the Green Berets don't work in hospitals. So, we're out in the field. We're right there, what we call the X, which is the bad spot where people are shooting. We are right there, usually pretty close by. And so that puts you in that place. But dedication, 100% to troops. That was my job. And I loved it. I would still be, to this day, because I hadn't aged out yet, I would probably still be on Operation Lone Star on the border right now if I wasn't a whistleblower. And I wouldn't have a single thing on the internet. I would have just went into obscurity and retirement, raising longhorns up on the Red River.
So you mentioned Operation Lone Star. I was just going to tell the audience that I did meet you a few years ago. I think in 2022 is what we decided. And I had helped to organize a march against mandates. They were mandating everybody get the shots, and not only in the military, but all the jobs, all the restaurants were closing down. They were mandating the mask. I had a kid who was a senior in high school, and I would not allow him to wear the mask. And we were, I was at the school board meetings yelling and screaming and trying to educate people that weren't listening and didn't care, because they were just bringing that money into the school by doing whatever the government told them to do. And you were a speaker at that march, and everybody, you were such a hit. Everybody just loved you. And your dog Joe, he was one of my favorites.
And Joe, he's always on stage with me. He's sitting right next to me. He's staring at me now. He heard you say Joe. His ears popped up. But that's the thing is, and I'm not a polished guy when it comes to things like that. I'll speak the truth every time. And sometimes, I can put a little tongue in cheek in it, but sometimes it's a very serious event when you're talking about, especially for all of us. There's not a person listening right now that doesn't know somebody that was affected by those things. Yep, and so whether they deny it or not, I mean, they know, deep down inside, they know. And so, when you're doing the right thing and then you don't find out about it till 2-3 years later, right?
Yep.
When Pete
When it's too
Hegseth, the
late.
Secretary of Defense, came out and said, "Yeah, you're right. It was an
Right.
unlawful order, but it's too late." And
Yes.
so sometimes you need to, don't be the lemming that's marching to the edge of the cliff with the other lemmings. Sometimes you need to use some critical thinking, get out of the emotional dialectics of argument, and literally listen to what the people that are saying with passion are saying. Right? Listen to it. Because now we know where we're at, right? And
Yeah,
it's not an "I told you so" moment. It's not an "I told you so" moment.
No.
It's a "let's not let this happen again" moment, because we've
Right.
already had that happen. So it's over. Now it's
yes.
Listen to us. Yeah.
Exactly. So many things such as this that I've stood up for, I'm like, I hope I'm not right. I hope I'm wrong. But,
Right.
but it doesn't end up that, unfortunately, facts speak for themselves. It's not about the science. It's actually about the facts.
Yeah, and that's why I testified in that case, that DOD case. This is a federal case in a circuit court in Florida. And, they brought me up as a fact witness, not an expert witness, because I'm a guy that stops bleeding on the battlefield, right? That's my job. But I know enough about virology, immunology, but I know more about common sense. And when I was a doctor in the military since 2003, and I'm on the border many years later, looking at young people having heart attacks and strokes, there's something wrong here, right? The saying in Texas goes like this: if you hear a hoofbeat, you don't think about a zebra, you think about a horse, right? And so it was that easy for me. I just looked and said, this isn't normal, right? Why am I getting these young kids that are falling out? Now, they didn't take it because I gave them shots. They came on the border already having taken them. I couldn't control that. But what I could control was anybody under my care. And that is what the truth, we say in the world of faith, truth shall set you free, but also the truth has a cost. And so my cost is, it's on my wall. You can't see it, but it's my letter that I got from the President of the United States, signed by Joe Biden. And it says basically, thank you for your years of service and your dedication to this country. Even though you got fired from your job for doing informed consents, which is what we trained you to do, which was tell the truth and stand in the gap. Right. And so I scratched out the name at the bottom with a Sharpie, and instead of where it says Biden, I wrote Brandon. But I just had to throw that out there.
I love that. Brandon.
I'm waiting to meet President Trump so that he can sign a new one for me, because he said he was willing to do that for soldiers.
That's awesome. I can't wait. You'll have to show me when that happens. Okay, so we'll go back to, you did mention Operation Lone Star, and we've been talking about the border quite a bit during this interview. So just go ahead, tell the audience a little bit about what Operation Lone Star is. Absolutely.
So during the Biden administration, the borders became wide open. It went from, in the words of Antonio Mayorkas, that was DHS, lead. He basically said, we're going to change it from controlled flow, these are his words, to controlled flood. And it did happen. And so we met 12,500 on average coming across from the Mexican side to the Texas side. That's just Texas alone, 1,254 miles of Texas border on the Rio Grande. We formed the Operation Lone Star. It started out as 600 soldiers. I was right there with them, the very first battalion to go to the border. Matter of fact, the battalion that has a streamer on it, on their flag, that says the Alamo, because that was William Barrett Travis's unit. So I was in that unit on the border. And so our job was to look for the needle in a stack of needles, if you will, the terrorists coming across, the bad guys coming across, fentanyl coming across, trafficking coming across. That was our job. But when you mix it in there and you create all these people that are being used as pawns, really, that's what happened to them. Majority of those people are not bad people, but it overwhelmed everything that we had on that border to be able to try to find our way through which ones of these are bad, right? And I feel for those people, but look, my dad came here legally, did it the right way. You can't just come into the country and say you're asking for asylum when you just came from a country that has no reason for you to seek asylum. That's what they claimed. And that's what Mayorkas allowed. And so now we were overwhelmed. Well, Trump has put the tourniquet on that wound, so to speak. And that's a good thing. That's helped us. But what's already come in? Like tens of thousands of bad people that have made it in, amongst the millions that did make it in. We're still looking for those, and we're still trying to chase down those Tren de Aragua and CCP characters and the Hezbollah, Hamas. I could name 150 different entities that have come across that don't mean the best of intentions for this country.
Right. Oh my gosh. Wow. How long were you down on the border doing that?
I did that for 2 years, essentially. If you add post-military, 3 years, total of 8 years in Texas. Went back and forth to the border numerous times, but my time on Operation Lone Star itself was still limited because I came off the job due to informed
Right.
consents.
Right, right. Wow. But then you've still been down there as a just as
Oh,
a citizen, yeah.
yeah,
Right.
well, yeah, for sure, because we do now. We were well, before we started this gubernatorial run. Now, or at up the like a week after, I was back down on ranches, literally with my horse and my dog, riding around looking for places where they were coming across to tell ranchers, just to inform them, look, here's where they're coming across, and this is bad. And this is, just an invasion of human people that are coming across to seek asylum. But these are bad. Stay away from them because you're going to get shot. And so I had to help ranchers, and they were just seeking all the help they could get. So then that's when I formed my Band of Merry Men, the Remnant Ministry A team, and we started going into high gear. And then we already knew about human trafficking, and all my guys are operators. So we started helping out, and then we got the attention of Tom Homan, and that was when things changed for us.
Okay. How did things change?
As I knew you'd ask that question.
How did you know? You set that up for me very well. Thank you.
No, but it's important because I want to explain what kind of man he is. So he had contacted somebody that had seen one of our signs. Somebody had put up a sign for us, Robert and Jamie Agee, the Billboards for Freedom folks. They put up a sign for us in Austin saying, "Let our people go," and basically had a little girl in the hand over the face, because that's what we were working on. We were trying to raise money, but they had somebody donate these signs, and there was one in Austin. And Holman sees this, and he's like, "Okay, who are these guys? Are they legit?" Because he's in that business. At that time, he was border 911 guy. And Jason Jones is a friend of mine. I worked with him on the border. He was an intel guy, and he works working on Holman's staff. He calls up Jason and says, "Who's this guy, Pete Chambers, that's doing this? Is he legit?" Because there's a lot of outfits out there that are just raising money and not doing it. Jason goes, "He's the most legitimate guy I've ever known. Here's his number." He called me and said, "Tom's going to call you." So I get this, no number ID thing on my phone. I answer it, and he's like, "This is Tom Homan. This phone call would have went really bad if I hadn't called Jason Jones first." He goes, "How can I help you?" And I'm like, wow. So our first big donation came through Moms for America, through Tom Homan's endorsement, and they gave us a check that helped us get started. And then we really went to town because we don't take a paycheck, so every bit of that went into operations, because we're all retired, and I get my disability check that's going towards operations too. But now I've got Tom Homan that's supporting us, and that's helping us now. Currently, he's the border czar. So we have this relationship through his team, not through him directly. He's busy, but I do. He does know who I am because, like I said, he's told me that was going to be a bad phone call otherwise, which is great, because I love that about the guy, but that he's willing to call out the people that are I know this term is used, I don't like it, grifters, but that is out there. And so we got to be careful of that. But I know that border like the back of my hand, and I know every sheriff on that border, and I know who all the good guys are and who all the bad guys are. So we're very effective at working in that space.
That's amazing. Okay, so you've dedicated about 40 years to the military, to protecting us and our soil. You've been a whistleblower. You've stood up against the government and the United States Army. You've done Operation Lone Star, protecting our border. You've been involved in stopping human trafficking. But you also have been involved in various disaster relief missions. Where does it stop? You just go on and on. Tell us about the
Well,
disaster relief too.
you know what? And this goes to something that somebody told me, and I use it now truly because it's true. Um, it's a natural progression of a man of God, or a person of honor, if you're not a believer, but it's a natural progression to see injustice, to see oppression, to see these things, or somebody hurting, and to take a stand. It's a natural progression. So that was, we got a call. Hey, North Carolina's under this huge thing. You guys handle chaos well. Could you go out there? And there was a concern that possibly people might be using that as a cover to take children. And so we can handle anything. So we went out there. We lit out. We went to North Carolina, the whole team, and we spent 3 trips total out there in the post Hurricane Helene. And then from that, from that, we were able to actually learn that we were pretty good with natural disasters because we all lived in disaster
Yes.
ridden places. War is a disaster. And so we were able to then get on the ground and help to build some of the spoke and wheel or the hub and spoke distribution centers, fly into places way up in the Appalachians and find people, and then recover bodies if we had to. It's a bad part of the job, but we had to do it. We were there. And so that really then taught us that we're pretty good with disaster. And then the second big disaster, of course, we've been in fires and things like that and whatnot locally. But then on Independence Day, the day I was going to kick off the campaign, we got the call that, Hunt, Texas, all the way down to Comfort, Texas, and the whole Guadalupe corridor was under a flood, the most historic floods in the state of Texas history. So we spent a while there, and that's what put us off on the campaign, but a labor of love. Yeah, we had to be there.
Yeah. Oh, that's awful. And they're still trying to dig their way out. I mean, it's awful. I interviewed somebody else who's been going back and forth with that disaster as well, and my
Yeah.
heart goes out to them.
I was gonna say it's home. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And it's in my backyard too. I mean, Fort Worth, I know it's a couple hours that way, but still that's
Sure.
home. Like it's close to
Backyard.
home. Yes,
Yeah, I'm in
absolutely.
Wimberley. I was in Wimberley that morning, and probably about 3 hours later, we were in Ingram, which is right there at Kerrville.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. And I've gone and spent, weekends at the Kerrville festivals and,
Yeah,
it's just beautiful country there.
it
It's
is.
so sad.
Yeah.
So now we're going to get into the meat of it because, I mean, I wanted to have you on just because I like to talk to you. You are running for governor. You are running against longtime Texas Governor Abbott. And actually, I heard you in a video asking to asking him to come and debate you. Have you heard anything back from that? Has he responded? No. Crickets. We're hearing crickets right
Crickets. You know what? I didn't expect that. I spoke to, before we did that, I did a feasibility study, right? Can we really do this?
now.
This is a very populist type movement. Populist in that, yeah, I'm known in Texas on the freedom side, of the people that pay attention, but not really a common household name. But we're getting there, and I know that we are. But I really took some time on that, and I talked to Alan West, who ran against him in the last
Yes,
election,
yes,
and
yes,
Alan is a friend, and I helped him on his campaign where
yes.
I could. And he said, Pete, the time wasn't right then, but it is now. People are looking for, this is what I believe, and now that I've done the study and also paying attention to sentiment analysis, not polls. Okay, don't think that polls are the answer, because that's the mistake of the past. Trump proved that wrong, right? So when we're looking at polls, that doesn't mean anything to me. His favorability rating amongst people that voted for him last time, well, maybe they're going to stick with him. But what I hear is he's okay. And when I kept hearing he's okay, but keeping up with the times where we're at now, career politicians are not the thing anymore, right? It's just not. It's not across the board. I'm seeing it. And the other thing is leadership that is transparent, right? In Texas, if you see what's going on in the state legislature, you look at that legislature.
Yeah.
I got some decent friends that are in there. I mean, good friends that are working in there, but they're very few and far between.
Right.
I'm not judging their character, but I'm judging the character of their leadership ability to stand in the gap for the people of Texas to say, no, this isn't right. Right? You whatever you want to call it, whether you call it a rhino or you call it weak character, I don't know, but I do know this: that the ones that I talk to, they're working in there. And can't really say much right now on endorsements, and I don't need endorsements right now. We're crescendoing right now. We're just moving up into pole position. If you're a NASCAR fan, if we keep moving up and we keep moving up, then we're going to get to exactly where we need to be on probably a week before March the 3rd. And that's really what you want to do in politics, as the way that I understand it. Well, you say, your listeners may say, well, what do you know about politics? I don't know much about politics, but I know about the populace, the center of gravity of when it comes to the politic of things. And truly, the Aristotle, his term politics, really what it means is is the polis, that's the city state, the people, and placing action upon that. That's the definition of politics. Most politicians would fail at that right now because there's not a lot of action, right?
No.
And so I'm an action guy, right? I could be an action figure, me and Joe, right? So we can do that, right?
Maybe you will be one day.
Somebody actually sent me a picture of like this AI created action figure with Joe and Doc, and I'm not going to use it in the campaign, by the way. But yeah, but what's important to understand is that that era is over. Talking to Alan West and others to say that what they want is real. It doesn't have to be polished. I don't have to have perfect teeth and great hair, right? It's not about that. I've known some serious politicians in DC. I'm going to keep names off of this because it's not important. But what's important is that because I spent so much time in DC as a soldier briefing Congress, I knew most of them down the Longworth and the other buildings over there. But specifically on the House side, a lot of politicians are really good at just being polished and speaking well. Like I can speak truth, and that's still well. Obama was a great orator, right? According to some people. But it's not that. That's not what makes the man. What makes the man is, I feel like I'm Nacho Libre, the nucleus of the man, what makes the man is truth, right? It's truth, right? The true thing. And do you have a servant's heart, right? Now you don't have to be a preacher to have a servant's heart. Matter of fact, many of them don't, but that's right. As a sidebar conversation. But
that's right.
Yeah, but this is the truest essence of where do you put your emphasis? Is your center of gravity on people? Because as a Green Beret, look, we're taught to go to foreign countries and overthrow them. So we understand how that works. Now we're not using those techniques here. All we're doing is we're putting the focus on the center of gravity, which is people. All right. Now we have to match that with the geopolitical, which is the up high stuff in their minds. But under the doctrine of lesser magistrates, which is a book, there's a great book and people should read. In that, the way the founding fathers built this thing was that the lowest level, the sheriff, the county commissioners, they didn't have that then, but the lowest level of leader is really where the sovereignty comes from for the people, by the people. That's where that comes from. So if our leaders are to represent us in this thing called politics, which is action on what the people want, if they can't do that right, then let's focus back on the center of gravity being the people. And then that gives me a fighting chance, right? It gives me a fighting chance because now what am I seeing? The sentiment is coming back to me in many different ways through many people. I've just spoken Highland Park and I just spoken in over there in Fort Worth at the Fort Worth Club, so like a high-end club in Fort Worth, lots of folks. Eisenhower spoke in the same room I was in. Right. So when he's kicking off his presidential campaign and somebody said, well, you're reaching an awful lot to the top. Why don't you just take this job or that job or railroad commissioner or whatever? Look, I'm an executive kind of guy. I'm not a legislator. I can debate and I can discourse with the best of them. And I can see people that get caught up in dialectics and they're emotional. But I'm not that guy. I wasn't issued emotions, but I'm a straight up leader. Right. That's what I do. I give commands. They do it. A centurion. And so when people see that and they see that real person, that's what I believe is what true Texans want.
It is what true Texans want, but we're not used to having that. Like we've been used to getting less and less and less. So do you feel like this is also kind of an educational campaign, like telling people this is what we're supposed to be doing all along? And so why don't we just do that? I mean, great
point, because it's where I fell. I hate to even admit this, but when I came home and I left active duty in 2015, came back 2016 in the Texas National Guard, even I fell under that spell of, well, it's not that bad. I mean, at least we're better than this state or that state. Well, that's cognitive dissonance, right? We can't get caught up in that. Boiling the frog. I've heard this a million times. Exactly. And that's exactly what happened. So now we can take the, 120 degrees, but we're not at boiling yet. Yeah. Well, let's think about this for a second, folks. Why don't we just, why don't we get back to just the common sense of running governance, not government, not politics, not playing the game of politics. I heard this spoken by the Speaker of the House of the United States of America to me as he got off a debate stage debating Joe Biden. And he said to me that Joe Biden said, this is straight up, I was there. He said, he got off the stage and said, Joe, and they know each other up there. They all, left, right, it doesn't matter. Sure. And he said, WTF, I'm going to tell you what he said. I won't use that word, but he said that. And he said, what was that all about on the debate stage? He said, come on, dude, this is all just a game.
It is. It's all show. I've always called it a horse and pony show. That's all it is.
Right. And that dog ain't going to hunt anymore. So we're done with that. So we're done with that because I'm feeling it. I wouldn't be here if I hadn't done my homework and listened to people from all the way from Gainesville all the way over to Lamar County down to Beaumont, my running grounds, Port Arthur, before I even stepped foot in thinking about doing this and just talking to people saying, what do you think if? Oh man, if you had a guy like that, I'd vote tomorrow. That's what I've got to do. I got to get the word out that, there's a new sheriff in town, so to speak.
That's right. Okay, so talk to me about some of your policies. Like, talk to me about the economy and, maybe the top 5 things that you would want to tackle first.
Well, and here's this is a great question. I was asked that the other day in Fort Worth. Texas is like 8 different countries, really, if you think about it. 8 different cultures, if you will, flavors, piney woods, RGV, you got the Red River Valley folks, you got the out west, the plains, the high plains, Temple and all that. I mean, all those places out there, all so different. Permian Basin, my goodness gracious, totally different. And so you can't just say, well, one size fits all. I'm going to fix this for everybody and they're all going to be happy. So you have to understand, first of all, the cultures of all the parts of Texas, and then listen to what they're saying to you, right? That's the center of gravity. Now, when the center of gravity is not me and what I want to do for Texas, but what you want to do, that changes the answer. Now, here's the answer. Number 1, okay, for us, transparency. And I'm going to be esoteric and kind of high level right now, but they want to see, like, to be able to turn on C-SPAN and watch lobbyist TV in their governor's office and go, okay, he's being transparent. What's he saying? Wow, you mean well,
he's telling us what's going on? What?
You mean you're going to tell us? Because here's what that results in if you don't listen. It results in Abilene right now dealing with a data center that takes more water and electricity from it than comes out of the sky, and they're promising them that they're going to get a net positive water. Okay, well, wait a minute. For who? Microsoft. Well, where was that deal made? The county commissioners didn't know about it because the center of gravity is not the people. It's the government. So if we think that way, then that answer for people in Abilene is, okay, you got to deliver us some water without our taxes going up. Okay,
that's right.
How does it look every time we have an emergency when more funds come in for emergency, but it's not spent properly? We got almost $26 billion sitting in a rotating emergency fund that are still money from Harvey in there. Yet we still have houses that were damaged by Harvey. So, but we have a problem because now we've got as the economy shifts, right, and property values go up and taxes go up on the properties. Then how do we tackle that? Well, I can say I'm going to abolish taxes. Well, I can't do that. You can't do that right out of the gate, but you can phase withdrawal taxes because you start doging things, right? Don Huffines is talking about that, and that's great. I think you should doge them, but you should have teeth to it, right? Because we saw what happened on the federal side. It didn't really amount to much. Right. I pray that they are now, but it may take time. But if you look at what the status quo did, which is Governor Abbott, 12 years, during his 12-year time, I Googled this and I AI'd it and everything else, and I had my staff looking at it, 26 to 27% rise since Abbott's been in from where it was. Okay. Wow. So he can say right now, we're going to give you special dispensation if you're between 100,000, 150,000, or 200,000 if you're over 65. What house do you know of in Texas that is in that price range, right? So it doesn't make sense. Common sense tells me that the answer is not just some kind of special, opt-out program or some kind of loophole that's going to help you, because now you've got to work to decrease the taxes that in this very Constitution that we're going to be operating under states in there that it is not to be, property tax was not to be used that way. There was a guy in the French Revolution named Frederic Bastiat, and he wrote about the French Revolution. He said, the purpose of the legislator is to illegally plunder the citizens. Okay, well, we're there now, right? Yeah. Unlawfully, illegally, because the labyrinth of lawfare or the policy stuff, the policy is a labyrinth. The Texas Constitution, albeit beautiful, is 100,000 words long. The U.S. Constitution is 7,500 words long. So when you have a labyrinth, right? When you've got a labyrinth to work your way through just to get back to you what is due in your very own Constitution,
Right.
then we've got a problem there.
Yes.
So we've got to look at that. What does that say for Pete Chambers? A stack of executive orders, day one. Going to piss everybody off. Excuse my French. Sorry. Going to make a lot of people mad, right? Because,
yes.
But I've got to get back to a sense of normalcy without disrupting the economy. So I can't just say day one, no taxes. I can't do that. But what I can say is that our task force, the brightest and the best, are going to find out a way that we can phase this out. Why is Florida doing this? And why is Oklahoma doing it? We can't even phase it out. They're talking about it. Okay. We should be ahead of them on that.
Right.
So that covers a few things that everybody in Texas would be concerned about. Abilene people specifically on the data centers. But the other thing is counter human trafficking. Let me tell you about that. If you want to see heaven on earth, look in the eyes of a child that's innocent. You see it right there. That's heaven on earth. Okay, so if you're not concerned about 300,000 unaccompanied minors, albeit from wherever they're from, missing from the border right now, missing. It's testified to in Congress. Tara Rodas testified to it. She worked for the HHS and for DHS and understands the numbers there, and she's shown them to us. We believe it's more like 500,000, but what they're admitting to is that. So let's just use that number. If you're okay with that, and you're okay with Governor Abbott busing hundreds of thousands of people, it's on his website, into the interior of the country, tongue in cheek. Oh, look who we sent to Chicago. That's not helping the problem. Okay, that's just moving them further into the country, right? That's not okay. I'm not okay with that because I'm a guy that considers what is it for you, the citizen. Women, children, men should care, but a lot of times they don't care about the security of a nation or a state. If they want to sleep peaceably in bed at night, then you have to have a commander in chief. That's the job title of the governor. He's not the guy that herds the cats. That's lieutenant governor in the legislature. He actually has more power than does the governor with regard to legislation. In Texas, it's very unique. But that commander in chief, so you can sleep in peace in bed in peace. That's my job. You don't worry about staying up all night. I will, and I know where the cats are hidden inside the canary cage. So we've got to get to work really quick on that. So those are main key items that everybody in Texas tells me about and says, "What are we going to do about Sharia law? They want to put that in this epic city up there." Absolutely, Lara Logan. I was speaking with her on her show. I said, "Look, here's what we'll do. You and me will go in there and we'll talk to them as a candidate, and we'll let them know you cannot have a law under the Constitution, both state or federal. You can't do that. So you don't waste any more money building your place out because it's not going to happen." Right? You get a different sheriff in town. Now, Governor Abbott did admit, and I'm not slinging mud, this is what he admitted to, that Sharia law is illegal in Texas. All right. He says it.
Yes.
Yet lots of grants are going to these organizations and they're continuing to stand up. The rhetoric is still coming, right?
Right.
I'm gonna use an RVG word. No bueno, right? No good. Right. We're not gonna allow that.
You do speak multiple languages.
Yeah, I got enough Texican in me. I can do it. And so those are just, that's security things. So, and then we keep going down the line and we look, and the other thing, honestly, the Texas DPS, of which I've worked with for years on the border. I love those guys. They take their marching orders from the governor. If the governor doesn't put in the top 10 major crimes, human trafficking, then it doesn't take a lot of their manpower. We need to move that up in the ranks. It's got to be in the top 10 because it's happening on the streets of Houston. It's happening on the streets of Dallas. It's happening out in the periphery. I just spoke to somebody today about little old, what town? Alpine, Texas. All right. Small place, beautiful place, human trafficking going on. So, as we're starting to look for us on our team, next place we got to rescue somebody. Why are we talking about little bitty towns like that? Right. Because people don't think about it. They don't know.
That's right.
You don't know what you don't know. I don't know what I don't know. Right now, if we could talk about school bonds, or we could talk about the amount of money that's been put into that shell game, we're talking about billions of dollars. And then we see that we are depending on what metricy you look at, we're between number 27 and number 40 in rankings of education. Okay. Yet we're the number 8th largest economy in the world. Well, let's do the math here. If you don't have the education to bring into the job force, right, to keep up with that education or that status of 8th largest economy, then where do they come from? How are you going to fill those ranks? they're going to have a transfer migration of people coming into Texas from somewhere else and not Texan kids, right, taking those jobs. And I'm
Yeah.
not just talking about college jobs, but VOTEC, all those things, hands-on skills. Those are the things we got to focus on to bring that up to match that economy.
Absolutely. Yeah, our schools are just a disgrace. And then it wasn't always like that. I mean, it has just
No,
been spiraling. I've just watched it just tank. It's just a
there are so
disgrace.
many reasons for it, and I don't have to know every one of them because I'm not an education person, but I'm educated, and I've drank from a fire hose on this, and I get it. I mean, I understand teachers aren't paid enough. Texas
Yeah,
teachers aren't paid enough, but they use the school taxes to do that. Yet the school taxes are covering debt through bonds. Okay, so the bonds are covering the debt, but the bonds are upside down right now. So how are we going to catch up with that? Yeah, they're
yes.
upside down. When
Right.
we lured in over the past 10 years, 10, yeah, about 10 years, we lured in um, the development people. We lured in a lot of IT. We lured in a lot of technology, and that's good, right? That's why we're number 8 in the world. But when
Yes.
we do that and we decrease their taxes upon them to come into the state, because that's how you lure people in, by the way,
Right.
makes us an industry friendly state. When you
Mm,
do that, where are you going to take that from to offset that? It's going to be back on the citizens.
that's
So let's
right.
just use infrastructure, for example. Drive up the road up to Lubbock sometime and not only look at the wind energy,
Turbines.
yeah, the turbines, the
Yes.
energy out there, and look
Yes.
at the solar panels, all that. Well,
Yeah.
somebody has to drive all that equipment out there. When they drive on those roads, they create potholes, right? That's
Yes.
infrastructure. So money goes into fixing that, but they don't have a usury fee because they were lured in with that. So their taxes are very, very low, and that was something that was done through legislation to lure that in. I think we're good now, right? We're good. We need to kind of offset that. So you
Right.
balance that out that way. But then you
Right.
look at all these other emergency funds and other things like that and say, can we best utilize, let's say that you say you're done with Hurricane Harvey, but you got this surplus. That's what a budget is called, right? And the governor
Mm,
is responsible for that budget. Now, do I have to be a CFO to understand a budget and run it as the governor? No, but I have to understand common sense to say, then if we have this here, why are we increasing taxes? And then telling them that, oh, but if you have a house that's between 100 and whatever, you'll get this break. And then
right.
that's what you're doing in special session right now, is saying, well, we took care of taxes, so we gave you a break. Right?
Yeah.
I'm fighting to get my taxes back. What? Okay, so there was some legislation that was proposed, and it had specifically to do with this bond issue. All right. And so there's a guy named Mitch Vexler. He's out there. He's talking about it. He's helping to write some of this legislation. We're talking to him because he's pretty astute on this. He's having a conference this weekend. I won't be able to make it. I've got a conflict, but I've got my tax guy that is going there specifically for that, because the school bond issue is really where I think we're going to get the best bang for the buck. And we've got to
Hmm.
make sure that we do some fiduciary responsibility there in order to especially if we're upside down on the
Yes.
securities of these monies that are out there in the school system. We don't want to see the schools suffer. They already have. We want to be able to increase teachers' pay without the
Hmm.
people from that local community having to pay for it. And many people have gone to private schools, right? So we've
Yes.
we've
And
lost some of those
homeschooling.
with vouchers,
Yes.
homeschooling,
Yes.
absolutely. And
Yes.
they shouldn't be given those extra taxes if their kids are being homeschooled. And
Right.
if you're over 65 and your kids are out, I get it, right? That's important. But we cannot do this without a deep dive. And at that table in Fort Worth, a gentleman that was there, these are the elite of Fort Worth, said that I was working on that personally, and I'm going to tell you that you can't answer that question at this table. Impossible, because it is such a labyrinth, and it is so convoluted. So can I give you the answer right now to what is going to fix the problem? No, I can't. But I
Right.
can say this, as a guy that's going to be the commander in chief that has the authority to put together a task force, that I will take the smartest, the brightest, without, this is the key, without any agenda, without any lobby, without a lobbyist or input, that type of input, without a special interest input, and sit down and work this out really quick so that we can start to phase out this. And I'm currently speaking to Governor Stitt out of Oklahoma, some of his people on staff, so that I can start doing that with my team. So I can't give you the final answer to that. Impossible in 3 weeks of campaigning, but I can say that it's not impossible to do, because It just requires it requires me to do exactly what I've told somebody in the past, which is to put my pecuniary wherewithal where my maxillary orifice is, which is put your money where your mouth is.
That's
right. So that's what we will be doing, because we're going to be transparent and honest about it, because most of these things get obfuscated in legislation that nobody could figure out. Now I'm learning, but I looked at it the first time and went, you got to be kidding me. Where's all this money? Why do we have that much out that is upside down? We're looking at a potential for later on down the line. Can we take 4 more years of this and not be completely upside down and completely broke? I don't know. The debt clock is still going in Texas as well.
I know, right? But I know property taxes is very important. It's an important topic for you because it's all over your website too. And almost every interview I've heard you say, across the boards, property taxes are important to Texans, and it is. And it is a subject that everybody has questions about. And
Well, you won't get it unless you start acting on it. And you can't wait until right before an election to have a special session number 3 in order to do it, because it looks a little fishy, especially when you're just getting, they're giving you money that you should have already had. So that to me is that's not how this is going to be run. This is literally herding the cats while they're in session, right? And if you need a special session from day one because you're an off cycle, then we do it, because we have to do that in order to get down the road. This problem set is too important to just put on the back burner. That's an important one. Okay, security doesn't just fall in the tactical world. It doesn't just fall in the kinetic world. Security falls also in your financial security. People will spend, you'll maintain, but also you'll start bringing that education level back up to where we can maintain that. Because if we don't, if we keep going the way we are, we don't want to be number 40. If you look at that one specific one I saw, I'm like, this is scary, because this was a place that is known. How are you going to fulfill these job requirements that are coming in the next 10 years when you're at number 40 or 27?
Yes.
That's the spread that we've got on these different studies.
That's awful. So do you have any thoughts about election integrity? That's kind of a big one
Sure.
too.
Yeah, that was a good question the other day from a rancher in Hayes County, a Longhorn rancher, and he was like, "Well, what are you going to do about election integrity?" I said, "Well, I got to get into office first, but that's not the right answer you're looking for. So let me tell you what I did about election integrity. I went up to the sheriff's convention this last year, not knowing I was running for governor, but because I wanted my sheriff to hand count ballots. And so I went through the training and I learned how to do hand count ballots. And then I went to speak to 254 sheriffs or their representatives up in Fort Worth at this last year's Sheriff's Association meeting, so they could then buy for that. They could bring that to their counties, and 2 of them took us up on it. And so we have seen at least 2 counties that are going to hand count ballots. What does that do? Well, when you have paper ballots that are hand counted, and you have the checks and balances of that specific way that that's done, it's kind of like watching people play cribbage. You got 4 people sitting at the table and everybody's watching everybody and you're counting the same thing. And then you basically turn that one in at the precinct level, right? So you can get it done by that night. And there's no more of these shenanigans of, jumping up over at 0300 in the 3 o'clock in the morning.
Isn't that the craziest thing? And people just, and imagine that happened overnight.
Right. And so this was by happenstance, but I lived actually, when I left the border, one of my buddies that runs a brewery distillery down here had some hookups for a trailer. I hadn't got any money from the Army. I was getting out. He let me hook up behind his shop there, just my trailer, RV that I left the border from. And he just happened to be Phil Waldron. Well, Phil Waldron is intrinsically known for, he came out of the Defense Intelligence Agency. He worked with Mike Lindell. He worked with some other folk, with General Flynn on election integrity. So I understand everything there is to know about Dominion and all those things and all the ways that our election was, I believe, stolen, or at least, well, I'm just going to say, I believe it's stolen. And so when it comes to those kind of things, now I speak directly to and have him on our team as a consultant on how we would then fix it in the state of Texas, so it doesn't happen to us. But that requires an executive order. Hey, guess what, everybody? Paper ballots, hand count. But with regard to the death penalty, I'm a proponent for it. There are certain things that I have seen with regard to human trafficking that are straight up evil. And those people, I don't know that there's any way to rehabilitate. Now, when it comes to rehabilitation, we're talking about incarceration. I believe a lot of people have been incarcerated that could be rehabilitated, but we focus there because a lot of money in incarceration.
That's right.
We need to start thinking about, do we really want the taxpayers to be paying for them to be in the jail for a long time for a non-violent crime?
Yes.
Some of those are pretty pitiful.
Okay, so is it fair to say that your target audience is veterans? And how do you plan to get all the vets out to vote? Because we need them.
Yes, we do, and there are 1.8, maybe 2 million veterans. The last primary was less than 1.9 million voters out of the 18.6 registered voters at the time, with Alan West and Don Huffines and Chad Prather versus Abbott on that primary. I would say that that is definitely a target audience, no doubt. But I have a bunch of college kids that we've got a Charlie Kirk kind of guy that's out there, not him, but we've got a guy that's going around to all the campuses with a group of guys that age, young guys that have mentored in different various places, military guys that are out now, young guys that go to college campuses during the game days, meet people. I'll try to circulate when I'm in that area, and we'll try to work on that college campus, kind of that younger generation. And here's why. Civic duty is one of the cornerstones of what I believe in as a governor needs to happen back in the schools. So when we're talking about civic duty, that's civics, right? You and I both had it as civics. Yes, that's kind of gone. It's been kicked out for DEI and woke. So we're going to go back to that. And so you cannot run you can't run a campaign without at least getting all aspects of the voting block age groups, but at least touching on that, appealing to some of them. But this is what I say, and this is why I know that we're going to appeal to a lot more than what people think in the sense of just plain old Republican. Because talking to the folks down in out in Houston, inner city Houston, who are mostly Democrat, when they start telling me, well, what you're saying is interesting, it's common sense, and they say, I'd probably vote for you. I might change my affiliation with regard to party. Absolutely. Because the thing is that people want you to be heard. Once again, get back to that center of gravity. I'm listening to what the people are saying. And that's, some people call that grassroots. I think it's more populist. Grassroots is kind of an older term that somebody once told me only losers say grassroots because they know they're going to lose. I don't know. I mean, I look at it as a
call it grassroots.
Yeah. And I do too. I mean, I have. And when the first time I said it, he was like, well, those are losers. I don't think so. I think that, the grassroots, the populists, the people, the center of gravity, that's the way I look at it. It's my terminology. The common sense folks will vote. The Fox News watchers and the CNN News watchers, the older folks that just don't really look at anything else online. I'm not saying that it is a lesser block than it used to be. But I just don't have the, when we start looking at a minimum of $10 million to get one mainstream media outlet, that means a lot more money. We're running this very efficiently. It doesn't mean we won't have it, but we have to budget. So as we crescendo, when we start getting those larger donations, we can work on some of those. But I think that the forcing function is going to be, who is this guy? And they're going to come to me, right, to us, to our team, and say, wait a minute, he's making a dent, because I already know that we are. When I start getting large radio stations in certain parts of Texas that are very even leftward leaning, but some of them that are kind of rhino leaning, starting to say, well, we don't know who this guy is, but well, if you're already talking about it, that's good. Vitriol will always come, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't scare me, but it makes me know that we're over the target. And that's a good thing. So I think people will come along. I think we're going to crescendo all the way to the end, and then it'll be a surprise for some people that said there's no way you're going to make this. And I just say, okay, well, I'm already out the door of the plane, and that's a parachute term, and now I'm out of the plane. I can't go back in it.
Yep, you are out of the plane, and you're not allowed to go back in.
No.
So tell me what I can do, and tell everybody what they can do to help you to get your name out there.
Great question. Honestly, there's two things you need, right? Three things. I need prayer. I need somebody to put gas in the tank, because we got to go down the road. That's if you go to my website, docpetechambers.org, you go there and you look at the little part that says give. You press that button, and then there's an option, and these are our three main options: $18.36, you'll figure out where I'm going with this in a second. $183.60, okay, or 1836, the year that Texas became a republic, 1836. Yeah. Easy to remember. And this is why I say that is, there were 300 Maine families that came to Texas, and I know I've met a few of the descendants, and it's awesome to meet them. But they're remembered in history as being the first people that settled here, the 300. And then you go on a little bit further down the line, and in 24 February 1836, William Barrett Travis wrote an eloquent letter from inside the Alamo saying, "Come to our aid with all dispatch." Right? Americans and Texans, all Americans in the world is what he was talking to. This is an American election. So if somebody's watching from Tennessee, we'll take some more help again, right? From South Carolina, we'll take the help again. We need some donations. We need to keep that gas in the tank, right? So that's the easy button, right? Just press the easy button and give continually throughout the campaign so that we can operate. But then volunteer page. So we just got that up and running and really working now. I've met some people all around the state that are taking it and running with it. They're getting campaign signs out, and that's great. And so we want a campaign sign in every neighborhood if we can. Yes. I can't make 254 counties logistically to get out there. So we're using this medium right here to get the information out so that we can get that help. Therefore, understand this. The 2nd of March, 2026, that's Independence Day of Texas. The 3rd of March is the date that you go to the polls. So the Independence Day is being followed by Liberation Day, right? Oh. So that means the day that we win this thing is the day that we can start working against the Democrat. We'll beat them handily, and then we will move into the position and then start working as Texans can truly understand that they can trust somebody to be transparent, truthful, and honestly a man of action, because that's what I do. I'm an action guy.
Yes, you are. Not an action figure, but an action guy.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's March 3rd. Everybody, that is the very important day. We've got to get over that hump. We've got to get past that, get him past March 3rd so that he can move on and go into November. Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm sorry that I took so much time, but it was so informative, and I just enjoy talking to you and love the information. And so I know my audience is going to love you as well. Thank you for coming on, taking time for me.